We got temperature changes on this one, Allistair, for the sense that you are in Florida right now and I'm in Minneapolis. So here we are in the middle of winter, where I'm sure my window is a little bit different than yours. I don't know what yours looks like, but I am staring over a frozen lake with tons of snow on top of it, and you're probably staring at some palm trees. But as we jump in, man, Allistair McCaw is with us today, which we connected rather quickly, man. And it was no more than 10 minutes of reviewing some of your content and your energy towards that. And I immediately went, I got to talk to this guy. So now we have you on the podcast. And for the listeners, this is going to be really fun. I know you and I chirped each other a little bit last night, which was really cool to dive into some context of what we'll share today. But essentially, we're talking about human performance and what it is to be a human and get your potential right. And so for me to stop talking and you to get into there and start talking, Allistair, first and foremost, thanks for joining me and joining the MindStrong project. But can you give a little bit of a substance for the people who are listening about where you're at, how things are going, and kind of paint a picture for what rabbit hole we're about to dive down?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Harvey. And yeah, it happened pretty quick, which is how I like to get things done.
Yeah.
I don't like to put things off, and if you can do it today, why not? Why put it off to tomorrow? So no, always an absolute pleasure to do this. I know you had another fantastic guest in Fergus on, and Fergus and I are good friends, and he's just a top class guy and so much knowledge and so good in his industry as well. Somebody I like to learn from as well. So yeah, absolutely right. I'm staring into palm trees right now. We don't have any seasons here. We just have from hot to hotter. And it's one of the reasons why I do live in Florida. It's always, I travel a lot, so it's always nice to know that you're going back to sunshine. And I mean, I need it. I think Harvey, I think I'm solar powered because I need the sunshine. I've lived in Europe, I've lived in Amsterdam and a few places where I really just couldn't stand it. I mean,
Right.
they're great places and so on and so forth, but just you're waking up in the morning, it's gray outside, it's cold, and I don't know, maybe I'm soft, but I just need that sunshine. I mean, I grew up in South Africa, which obviously is a sunny country with, like Australia, good weather.
Yeah.
And I tried the cold climate and couldn't do it. And that's why I'm here in Florida. But no, all good. I can't believe we're almost through the first month of January already in the new year. It just shows you how time flies, right?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane, man. I share that with you too on the sunshine piece. We for our background of what our baby of the company we have is sauna and ice, and we have a mobile sauna that we made for about 16 plus people. And
oh, wow.
and it's a wood fire, so you hear the crackling of it, and obviously you heat it up. And I tell people, yeah, sure, we did the health benefits, but I needed a way to be outside. I'm a baseball player at Trait, so all of my memories are all down, in the summer, or you go down to Florida when you can, and Arizona and those sort of things. But when I tell people very truthfully, man, we just built a hot box so we could feel outside and get out there. But I share that with you, man. The gloominess is tough, and it's up here it's almost easier to train in the summer than it is in the winter, because it's just, you're so excited with the sun out all the time.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you've seen that. But we actually just got back from Amsterdam. I was in Amsterdam a month ago or so. So we were at that was my first experience there. How long did you spend time living there?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was there maybe 6 years, 5-6 years. That was back in the early 2000s, so it's quite a while ago. But and I always love going back to Europe. I'm going, I'm heading out again Sunday to Scotland and London to do a series of talks and presentations there. So I always like that. But you know what? 2 weeks is enough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so you rattled off, it's not like you were going from Iowa to Kentucky there on your moves. You rattled off some heavy locations across the globe. What what has brought you or taken you all over the world? And sounds like you've lived in some places for extended periods of time as well.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, sorry, I was just getting some other noises there. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, can you hear me? Could you hear the question?
Yeah, I'm just hearing some other. I don't know what's going on here. I'm just sorry about this. I'm just getting some other sounds in my ear right now. I don't know where it's coming from. So.
Oh, you're all good, man. Hey, I got actually, this is the beautiful part about the podcast is we can always, we're good. But I'm pretty clear. Do you hear like a buzz or anything?
No, that's better. That's better. Sorry about that. Yeah, I didn't get your question. Sorry, Harvey.
Oh, all good, man. No, so the basically when you look at the locations you're dropping, right, and in the places are, like I said, you're not traveling from Iowa to Kentucky here. You're going from South Africa up to Amsterdam to Florida and all these places. I mean, what has taken you all across the globe in terms of like living? How have you? What's the backdrop of that? Is that just pure excitement, or is that job, or how is that sort of formulated in your life?
Yeah, well, from a very young age, I wanted to be a professional in tennis, and when that didn't work out, I still wanted to be a professional in a sport. So, growing up in South Africa back in the 80s and 90s, we were isolated a lot from international sport because of the political issues there and so on and so forth. So it was always a deep obsession and goal of mine to, get out of the country and go travel. And sports was one of those things where I could make it happen. So I took up running. I was the South African under-16 champion, and in the 5 kilometer. And that took me to duathlon and triathlon, where I went on to have a decent career. I competed professionally for 9 years. I competed in 5 world championships.
Wow.
And that of course took me to many amazing places, Tasmania, Cancun, Italy, Belgium, all these places where I was able to race. I got to race 2 or 3 years in Europe as well for a German and French professional team. And for me, I'm traveling more now than I used to. Even when I was an athlete, I mean, I'm traveling. Last year alone, I did, I think, 109 flights.
Come on. Wow.
And people always ask me, how do you do it? And I say, I love it. I see it as a privilege. I mean, I have no problem with jumping on a plane, and some of the most productive time I get, I either need to rest or I need to read or research, and
sure,
it's always productive time.
That's a great point too, right? Because there's really nothing else. It's like a peaceful place being up in the air at some points, right?
Exactly.
And you get to do that. That's still, I mean, what does that, have you noticed, I just wrapped my head around that. That's basically flying every other week, right? For a year?
Pretty much. I mean, I can, Europe is pretty easy to get around. So, you can be 1 hour, you can be in France from Amsterdam, and you can be, under 1 hour from Amsterdam to London and so on. So, it's easy to take multiple flights. And then, of course, when you're going to a destination like Thailand or something, you need to take 3 flights to get there. So, it all adds up pretty quickly with the flights. But, here's the thing, Harvey, now they have Wi-Fi on long haul flights and so on. And I don't even want it. You know what I mean? It's actually a time for me not to be on Wi-Fi or on the internet. I just, unless there's something obviously urgent going on that somebody needs an answer, but I don't want that. I'd rather just read, and it's probably the only time I can actually just switch off and not have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, and I digest that well. I feel that as well too, and that's where that peaceful sense of you just kind of get to digest and reflect on things and read and you don't have to do anything. You just get to sit there and relax, and I agree with that. And it's interesting to me though as well, because your profession, and obviously as a former athlete, and I know you're probably still heavily into your fitness as we all are, right? But you look at that as, you are speaking to people, you're staying in shape, you're moving around the world, and that's got to take a toll on your body. I mean, what have you seen to be productive in the sense of keeping your mind and your body sharp for yourself? And you even alluded towards it just now, like, because I'm sure a lot of people are poking at you. And then you go and speak, there's a lot of energy taken up there. What are some of the things that you've found out that keep you, at homeostasis for a long period of time?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is that you got to take care of yourself. Before
Yeah,
you can take care of others, you need to take care of yourself. So, as selfish as it sounds, my priority is my health and my well-being. Just as you mentioned
for
there.
sure.
So, I have to be deliberate about it. I have to be intentional about it. People talk about it, but I purposefully have a morning routine where I will get some exercise done. I'll get some reading done. I'll do what I call thoughtfulness, which is some people might have meditation, some people might have something else that just gets them in the right frame of mind. For me, it's thoughtfulness, just thinking about others, who maybe needs a message that day, for example. So in the morning, I have a morning routine that primes my mind and body for the day. I find that's very important. So that's one way I take care of myself. I also aim to have a nap in the afternoon as well, so I can maximize the second half of my day instead of having, a getting more and more fatigued throughout the day. I'm not a great sleeper,
Okay.
which I've never been a great sleeper, and believe me, I've tried everything in the book, melatonin and
Yeah.
dark room and so on and so forth. But honestly, I'm just so excited, and this might sound cliche. I'm just excited about life. I'm excited about my purpose, that I'm constantly thinking about ideas and thinking about things that I sometimes can't shut off. So it's I have stress, I have problems like everybody else, but it's a positive type of stress,
Yeah.
if I can explain it like that.
Well, it's fun. It's wild you said that. That was going to be my next question. You actually answered it, because I was just from even talking to you immediately, you can feel it, right? And I was going to even ask you that. Do you think that that's just because you're excited, or thinking things, like you go to bed and you go, okay, I just need to get a little bit of sleep at night so I can get back up tomorrow and do it again. It's more of just check it off real quick so you can get back to what you love to do.
No, absolutely, Harvey. I at the beginning of the year I put out 10 rules for success, and that was something for myself. It wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't something I put out for everybody. But you know what? I thought, I'm going to share it because I encourage, when I speak to audiences, I encourage them to make up their own 10 rules of success, whatever they may be. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So the first one is having a vision and purpose, and that answers the question that you've asked me now. Is I've got a lot in my mind. I'm thinking all the time, and when you have a vision for your life, and you have a greater purpose, which is linked to your passion, and it's something you would do if you didn't get paid for example.
Yeah.
That's what excites me. It excites me that I get to write, and I get to share my story with others, and moments like this with you on the podcast, and sharing to others. That excites me. Because I believe we all have a story to share.
Yeah.
And I believe that we can all inspire, even if it's just one person, or help one person. You've made a difference, because who knows where that person can take that. It's like Facebook. One friend becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what excites me and I believe this, that you've got to have a vision for your life, what you want, and a greater purpose, something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely, man. Can you go into? I love how you use the word "share" that, right? Because it's like you're teaching yourself. When I first got into the world, I haven't been able to. I haven't done as many things as you've done in that realm, and I think I admire just listening to you speak about the way that you live and travel. And I can't imagine how many people you've been able to influence at this point, how many people you will. But it's always cool to hear that from people like yourself, right? Like, you wrote those rules for you, and then it's almost like the gift is those rules to people, but those are also things that you're trying to follow, because sometimes, a lot of times, you listen to a speaker and that's your gift out there that you're sharing, and so you can go, okay, that's what this guy's doing and that's what he's improving. And can you go into those, how you developed your 10 rules, how did you try to prioritize them? Is one more important than 7, and all those sort of things? How did you sort of develop that system?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I would say, I keep a list of things I've learned in life. And I put that out probably about 6 months ago on my Facebook page, I think it was.
Yeah.
And, every year, if you're a lifelong learner, that I'm sure most of the listeners listening to your podcast are, because I can see this is a positive life learning type of podcast,
Yeah.
which is super. I write down things of what I learned this year. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be lessons, but I like to look at that. I like to journal, what I've learned. But no, to answer your question, my 10 rules aren't in any particular order. They're just things that I'd write down. I mean, like you said, 8 could be number 1, and
Mm-hmm.
number 1 could be 10. It doesn't really matter. But you could write down 30 things, 40 things.
Yeah.
But I think those are the 10 things for me that really stick out for me, because they're all very linked to my vision. They're all very linked to my purpose in life. Number 1 is the most important. I've got to admit that. But the next 9 pretty much all relate to a vision and purpose.
I love. Do you think that a vision comes first and then the purpose comes next, or how? Something I've always
Yes.
thought over. Yeah, go ahead. Go take that and run with it.
Yeah, for sure. A vision does come first, of what you want. Every great leader has a vision. Martin Luther King had a vision.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela had a vision. Steve Jobs had a vision. Every successful person or person that made an impact, be it for positive or negative. Hitler had a vision.
Yeah.
Be it for positive or negative, they had a vision.
Right.
So I believe it's important in your life to have a vision. And some people, I don't know what my vision is. I said, well, what is your passion? What do you love to do? Okay, I like to paint. I like to do this. Okay, maybe one day you want to have an art gallery. Maybe one day you want to go to art fairs, or whatever it may be, and you start to, I believe your passion finds you in a way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
People say, how do I find my purpose? Because we've been drilled about find your purpose. And, some people will almost, they're in pain, they're frustrated when they'll say to me, I don't know what my purpose is. How do I find my purpose? Well, your purpose finds you in a way, because the more experiences you have in life, the more things you do, the more you'll realize, oh, I love doing that, or I can't stand doing that. So you've just eliminated one more thing that you don't like doing. Great.
Mm.
And then you begin to find what it is you love to do, and what triggers you, and what maybe touches your heart, so to say. And that's how you find your purpose eventually. But if you try and force it, it's not going to come. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I do. I do.
Mm-hmm. And the older I get, that my purpose now wasn't the same as my purpose 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So it can shift, it can change.
I love how you say that. Yeah, it's evolving, right?
Exactly, because when you're learning, when you're growing, you're evolving.
Right.
So my perspective in life now is not the same as it was 5-10 years ago. Probably yours the same, and all the listeners as well. Is that, think about this. Think of the person you were 5 years ago. You've changed, right?
Oh, tremendously.
Right. And probably every single person that's listening to this right now will agree with that. That, yeah, I'm not the person I was 5 years ago. Hopefully you're a better person.
Right.
And again, I know people that are listening to this podcast, or listening to positive podcasts, are people that are progressively changing. They're evolving. They're staying relevant. And that's what I say. Your purpose and even your vision can change.
Well, what do you think stops people from wanting to learn, right? Because learning, to me, I mean, like, I'm dialed in to listening to you speak right now. And like I told you, when I came across you, I just started diving into all your content, and it was exciting, right? And I want to learn and learn and learn. And that is why I started the podcast originally. But what do you think stops people from learning? Because I would agree with you that when you're learning, you're curious. And when I'm curious, I start asking good questions and those sort of things. And now I get to have things come to me, and I can go, no, that doesn't sit well on the heart, or that does sit well on the heart. Let me try that one a little bit deeper. And that, to me, is what I would categorize as learning. But why do you think some people who maybe don't positively progress, why do you think do they stop learning? Do you think that has a lot to do with the lack of vision or feeling stuck?
You know what it is? I think it's, getting back to obviously Ryan Holiday, who's a fantastic author, that ego is the enemy. I've always said that coachable athletes are why athletes are uncoachable or people are uncoachable is because ego gets in the way. It can be arrogance. It can be, I don't need to be told what to do. I don't
Yeah.
need to learn that. I know that already. That's the ego. That's the ego speaking. So I think that's one of the things. And then the other thing is just lack of interest, lack of wanting to know more. I always believe that interesting people are interested.
I love that. Yeah.
Like you just said now, curiosity. You're curious about things. You're curious about getting into the mindsets of others. You're curious about asking questions. The older I become, the more curious I get about things. And it's like they say, the more you think you know, you don't
The
know.
less you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think age maybe does that for you. I mean, I'm in my 40s now.
Yeah.
If I look back to 10 years ago, I have to be embarrassed where I thought, man, I thought I knew it all. I was, and then when I look back, I just think I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. And I hope in 10 years' time,
You
I'm
say
going to
that
look
again.
back.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to look back and think, oh man, I thought I knew it all in my 40s.
Well, I'm 30, so I'm the young buck. I'm what you were 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
so I'm.
You know what, Harvey? I really wish there was podcasts back. I know podcasts have been around since,
Yeah.
I don't know, 2008,
Yeah.
where they really, well, maybe even longer, but 2008, I think they really hit the,
The
podcasts.
market.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I really wish I'd have had the access to, people of influence and people that made an impact back then in my 20s or early 30s. Listening to podcasts, because I really think it would have maybe sped up a few things in my life. And but it is what it is, and
Right.
thank God I'm still learning. I mean, 2 months ago I was sitting with Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K at Duke, and
No way. Yeah.
we're having a great chat in his office, and he's 72, and the guy's talking like he's going to be living to he's immortal. He's
Yeah.
40 years at Duke, and I know here in the United States that Duke, you either love them or hate them.
Oh yeah.
It's a little bit like a Patriots type of thing, or the Yankees. You
Yeah.
either love or hate them.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's because they've been so successful. Regardless if you love them or hate them. But, Coach K talks about, adapting. It's all about adapting. It's adapting to your environment. It's adapting to the people that are in front of you. He told me that he has not coached one team the same in
Wow.
40 years.
Wow.
Because he has to adapt. He has to change. He doesn't have, for example, Zion. He's not there anymore. There's another Zion there right now that he has to completely change his approach to.
Yeah.
The way he worked with Zion, he can't work with somebody else right now. So, in the coaching world, in the leadership world, if you're stuck in your own ways, and this gets to point number 3 of my 10 rules of success, is stay open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in that, that's the way we've always done things here. Can you imagine if Coach K said, well, you know what? We coached like this when we won our first championship, and we're not going to change.
Well, he wouldn't be there. Well, you'd have to. Yeah.
He wouldn't be there. It's like Coach Wooden. Coach Wooden also adapted. Coach Wooden also changed. That's what great leaders and great coaches do.
And so I would even. Do you think that? Because something that's always fascinated me about a guy like Coach K or Saban or Belichick or the Patriots or those guys or anyone that stays at a system, something that's always been so cool to me is how do you stay somewhere for 40 years and keep adapting? He's still going down the same street, the same sidewalk, same gym, those sort of things. And he's adapted, he's evolved, he's met different players, different coaches, different struggles. And it's what do you think that is that gets, like, what have you experienced with people like Coach K who have been able to sustain culture for that long? Because I mean, that's got to be one of the most remarkable things that humans are able to do, right?
Yeah.
Is do something like that.
Yeah. For Coach K, it's all about, it's linked to his purpose, which is family.
Yeah.
He is so, he's such a family man, and that's what he brings into his team. And Coach K discussed the fact that before they bring recruits in, they meet his wife and the kids. Wow. And they have dinner, and it's basically, it's the family who make the decision if that athlete is going to be a fit for the team or not. It's not actually Coach K, because by the time you get to sit around his table, he knows you're a good player.
Yeah,
So
true. Yeah.
he is so closely linked to his family. So for him, it's a big family thing. I mean, he was offered, I think, $37 million to go to the LA Lakers. Now, any basketball coach in the world, no matter what level, would kill to coach the Lakers. I mean,
For
it's almost
37
like
mil too. Yeah.
yeah, that too. But I mean, I don't think it really matters to him anymore with
Right.
regards to numbers. I think
Right.
he's played pretty well there. But I mean, hey, here's the thing: we've all got an ego. We all have an ego. If you love yourself, which I hope you do, because that's the most important relationship that you have, is that you have an ego. Ego is tied to your confidence.
Yeah.
I believe I can do this. That's ego. It's a healthy ego. However, this is what impresses me so much about Coach K. Ego could be saying, "Wow, the Lakers, NBA," and that's when Kobe was there. That was like in the. It was actually Kobe that wanted Coach K
Coach
there.
K, yeah.
Yeah, because it was after 2008. It was after
the USA.
Yeah, won the gold.
Yeah.
And I think Kobe was so impressed with, obviously, Coach K's ability to bring teams together, and massive egos in the NBA. That team had Garnett and Dwayne Wade and Jason Kidd and all these amazing players.
And he gathered them. Yeah.
And then I think it was, a few months after, LA Lakers put the offer on the table saying, could you come? And he turned it down, which everybody thought, that's crazy. And of course, the number as well. But he is just such a family man, and Duke is, he will live and die Duke.
It's amazing.
I don't know if you saw the game the other night where the Duke fans were chanting. They were playing a school where the opposing coach, I think, was an assistant at Duke a few years ago.
And they chanted his name?
Well, they were, what's the word I'm looking for? They were taunting him. They were,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And Coach K lost it. He went across to the Duke fans and he reprimanded them. He scolded them, saying that he is one of us. He will always be one of us. That's what it means to him. Check it out. Go on YouTube.
I will. That just gave me the chills. I can.
I think it happened 4 nights ago or whatever. But we've seen Coach K furious, but he was furious with the Duke fans, his own family, call it that, for the way they were treating an opposing coach. And for me, that's class.
Yeah, that just gave me the chills. That's remarkable. That is, it's just sticking to your values, and you've touched on. I'm really excited to ask you this next thing because this keeps poking in my head about you've touched on the word ego, and you used a great example right there with Coach K, and then obviously brought it into existence with the Ryan Holiday. And I've always tinkered with this, and I'd be curious to see what you're thinking, and how you can kind of simplify or break this down for me. But I've always thought ego is in the beginning I'm not there yet. I've just thought about this a lot, but I've always thought, okay, well, the ego could push me into action, right? Because there's my self-confidence, or there's what I want. This could maybe be a vision, and I have the ego to think I could do it. And that could push me into action. But then would you think that, A, that's a good idea? And then B, once you get into action, now you got to strip the ego to be able to sustain any sort of action over the long haul. That's kind of what I've been tinkering over, of the way of formulating ego, because I don't want to associate anytime I hear ego as bad. I just want to dive into the depths of, okay, is that in my way? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. Failure is very, very linked to, or failing is very, very linked to ego. Because the reasons why we don't want to fail are, what are people going to think about me? Or, what if I don't get that job? Or what if I don't get that position? Or what if I don't win this game, for example? That's all tied to ego, of, what you think other people are going to be thinking, the perception from the outside. So, when you can get over that, and I know it's very easy to say, don't worry what other people say. Well,
right.
That's just not realistic. It's of course you're concerned about what other people think of you, but if you're too attached to that, then you're never going to be happy in yourself, and you're always going to be living your life trying to please other people. And we all know that if you just continue to try to people please, the person that's going to lose out is yourself. So absolutely, ego is attached to our fear, our doubt. Is we're thinking, well, how's that going to look for me?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's wow, powerful, man, powerful. And I love the attachment part too, because how do you? Oh, I guess I got two questions. I don't want to forget the second one, but when you, for example, you've had to have danced with that a lot, right? Because if you go on and speak to people, or you go and work with organizations, and you've got to receive praise, I got to imagine, right? Or people think, oh man, you have it all figured out, those sort of things. And I know that you've got to be very cognizant of recognizing that on your own end and being aware of, hey, like, I'm just a man, like I always kind of think of it as I'm just a man on a walk, right? But how have you dealt with some things with the ego on your own end? Have you ever felt like I'm thinking too much? Does that make sense? How have you sort of dealt with that praise, and then sort of doing your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was brought up in a humble home where my parents would really remind me of to stay humble, and I'd come home and say, yeah, I won the race, and that's nice. Well, but we wouldn't stay too long in it, so it kept things in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You're only as good or bad as your next game or your next match. You're not as good as bad as your last one. So for me, life has always been about this moment and going forward. And again, and I'm gonna give the listeners what the 10 rules are at the end of the podcast. I'm trying to think what number it was. Actually, I think it was the last one. Appreciate the moments. Wow. And it is about appreciating the moments. Like this moment right now, me speaking to you is a privilege. Right now, me speaking
likewise.
To you is part of my purpose, part of my reason of what gets me up in the morning is I get to share. Mm-hmm. I wake up each morning and I automatically think of two things I'm grateful for. It's become a habit.
Wow.
And honestly, when I wake up, it's the first two things I think of. But it took me, and I experimented in this, it took me 90 days to build that habit. And what I did was I put stick-it notes next to my bed, which just said gratitude. And, listeners are probably thinking, man, this guy's wacko. He's mm-hmm. like, busy with this, busy with that. No, it's pretty simple. So I'd put like stick-it notes on next to my bed. I don't use an alarm clock because another habit of mine is getting up early.
Yeah.
I don't sleep past 5 o'clock. And so I stuck the stick-it note on my lamp, which just said gratitude. So every morning I'd open my eyes, I'd see the word gratitude. And I'd go, okay, I think two things I'm grateful for. And I'd try to be original. I try to be like, not always say, oh, thank you for this weather and thank you for a nice warm bed.
Right.
But, I'm grateful for that. But it would be something like, I'm grateful today that I get to speak to Harvey on the podcast. Yeah. I'm grateful today that I get to go run because some people can't even walk. Things like that.
Powerful. Yeah.
And it took me 90 days, plus minus, to be able to do that without having to have a stick-it note next to my bed. So I have this thing called the 99.
I was gonna tap into that. Go ahead, because that was really fascinating to me when I kind of picked up on those from you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. I mean, was it 90 days? I don't know if it was exactly 90 days, but I know it was around there. But I believe in the 90 days rule. Some people say 21 days to develop a habit. No chance. Right. Some people say, I think there was a 60-day one going around. I believe in 90 days to develop a great habit because that's quite a long period. And I believe that it takes you 9 days to lose a habit. So why do I say 9 days? Because a lot of people can do something for a week. And then it gets to that Sunday and it's like, oh man, I just can't go on with this diet anymore. Or you know what? It's Sunday. I'm just going to do this. And do you see where I'm going here?
Yeah. Oh,
it's like it gets to that 7-9 days where it's like, oh, you know what? I can't sustain this. The idea of like, I want to go to gym every day. No, that's not going to work.
Right.
Even the greatest fanatics don't go to gym every day. And that's why New Year's resolutions fail, Harvey, because they're unrealistic. They're not attached to a greater purpose. They're attached to something more superficial.
Yeah, yeah, man, that's. Did you? We can dive into that as well. But did you when you put? I'm thinking about that progression of gratitude. Did you think to yourself, I'm going 90 days? Like, what did you have a plan of 90, or did you just gather yourself around the 90-day window and go, okay, I think this is pretty habitual at this point? Because I tend to agree. You see the 21 or the 60, 90 days you're in it. You're in the thick of it. That's pretty much a quarter of a year. That is, right?
Well, do you know what it was? It was also, yeah, exactly. It was also studies that have been on people who set New Year's resolutions. And
oh, so that's where, okay, yep.
Yeah, and by the time they get to middle March, I think it's less than 20% are still sticking to the New Year's resolutions. I mean, less than 20%, that's nothing. And then I think by June, it's less than 11%.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I read that, I think 1 or 2 months ago on Twitter, or I printed out the article. I want to find it. It was a good resource as well. It wasn't just someone, it was a good resource. It was, I don't know if it was Harvard Business School or something like that. But, I believe it as well, because I love to put out a lot of questionnaires to, when I go to conferences and seminars and I speak at colleges, I love to put out questionnaires. I like to do like surveys.
Mm-hmm.
And, for example, I consulted LSU and I consulted a few colleges where I love to know, here's an interesting thing about this Generation Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I love talking about the generations because I believe the future leader or today's successful person understands the generations better than anybody else.
Mm.
And that's one area I've been really investing in the last 2-3 years, is understanding generations, understanding the generations before us, understanding this generation, understanding the generations that are going to be coming after us. Because, I mean, you're a millennial.
Yeah.
Millennials are now 40.
Right.
And then we had Z generation, and then I think the next one is called 2013 and onwards is called Alpha generation, I believe.
Okay.
They come up with different names. It'll be Alpha, and then somebody else called it Nexters, and I was like, okay, well, which one is it? Is it Alpha or Nexters?
Yeah.
But where was I going with
well,
this
what
generation?
have you picked? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I picked up is that the Z generation, which is they're now, the oldest ones are now 25 and the youngest are 13,
okay.
is that they need more individual attention than previous generations. So they need more individual attention than you did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put out this questionnaire. I was at LSU 2-3 weeks ago, and I put it out to another college in North Carolina. And it was a questionnaire about team culture and things like that. And one of the questions was, do you believe in one-on-one meetings, and do you want them? So that's one-on-one meetings with the coaches.
Wow.
Now,
yeah.
I can tell you that 10 years ago, it was like, no, I don't want one-on-one meetings. I don't need one-on-one meetings.
Right.
It was almost like more than 86% on these questionnaires, and I asked probably 80-something athletes between the ages of 18 and 22, more than 86% want one-on-one meetings with their coach each week.
Wow.
That's high demand.
That's high demand. Is that even achievable at most places?
Yes and no. And this is what I emphasize to coaches and leaders, is that you need to make time for the one-on-one meetings, because this generation needs them, more than ever, even if it's for 10 minutes.
Right.
Even if it's just for 10 minutes. And the successful cultures that I've worked in point out that the fact that they spend more individual time with their athletes and attention, that they get better results, and the atmosphere changes, the culture gets better, teamwork happens, collaboration happens because of this. So there's just one example of, I could give you 20, of how important it is to understand this generation. My generation, which is the one before you,
yeah,
which I'm X generation.
Okay.
We had this mentality of, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And I don't need anybody to help me, because I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
And I had that for a long, long time. Actually, probably till a few years ago, where I was like, you know what? I can do it myself. You know what? I don't need help. Until I realized that you do need help. And when you can collaborate, when you can put trust in others, great things happen. And again, getting back to the 10 rules of success, stay open-minded. I wasn't open-minded enough 5 years ago.
Do you think that the generations, so I mean, I'm very, very fascinated by the breakdown of that. That is amazing. And I can see it, right? And do you think that when your generation, so if your generation was, I got this, do you think that because my generation is essentially influenced by yours, and then my generation influences the 25s to 13s, and then so on and so on. And do you think that the backdrop of that is sort of where our biggest problem gets? You know, I talked to Fergus Conley about always trying to solve the right problem, right? Or, you know, these sort of things. Do you think that whatever your guys' strength is becomes our weakness, and then whatever our weakness becomes the next generation's strength?
Yes and no. You know, obviously we're living in a world now today where things are changing very, very fast, much faster than ever before. You know, we've gone from an industrial society in the 30s and 40s we've gone from an agricultural society in the 30s to an industrial society in the 60s, 70s, 80s to a technological society.
Yeah.
You know, things changed in mid 90s.
Yeah.
You know, I can remember still, you know, in school there was one computer for 1,000 people, and only the smart kids got to use it. It was like, you know, the days of MS DOS and like green. It was like an IBM, like, and it was that like green, black screen and green like text on it. I don't know if you remember. You're probably too young to remember that. So things are changing so fast today that it's hard to keep up with. You know, I think the hardest job today is being a parent.
Right.
I really, and I'm not a parent, but
right.
I think it's really the hardest job because, you know, the control of, you know, your kid of, you know, was it now? I saw a stat again. Is that is it like 90% or 95% of kids have, you know, kids over the age of 8 now have cell phones, or over the age of 11 or whatever. You know, they can go on to Google. They can find anything on there, good or bad. I mean, the control today is, you know, can you control it? And how do you control it? And that's why I think, you know, it always gets back to values and principles in the home of, you know, how you're brought up, you know, what's right and what's wrong. And, you know, I think that's where it comes from.
Well, right. And it's also a hard day and age to coach as well, too, because that's sort of the adaptation that you have to have as a coach, because you're kind of on call. You could say something as a coach or a parent, and then, you know, whoever's listening to you has access to go type that right into Google and get a laundry list of opinions, you know, and you can kind of go from that route too, which I've got to imagine. I'm also not a parent, but I got to imagine, you know, that's got to be super hard too, which comes back to what you just stated, right? Well, if the values are strong, I mean, morally, we've, you know, moral judgment has been something that has stayed pretty consistent since we've been on the planet. Just do what's right and do less of what's wrong, and try not to do that.
Yeah.
You know, man, that is really cool. Why do you think that? Well, what's the millennial? What's how you say you guys, your generation is, you can do it on your own. The 25 to 13 is one-on-one time. What's the experience with like a 25 to 38? Is that the millennials? What's the millennial age gap?
Yeah, you see, you've got millennials who are now 40, and the youngest are 94 or 26 today. So
okay, yep. So
you've actually got two types of millennials. You've got millennials, which are your first half, and millennials, which are your second half. The first half millennials are still very, very influenced by us, the X generation.
Okay.
So they're still maybe a little bit stubborn. You know, they also experience the transformation of technology of the iPhone and things coming in, so they understand it a little bit better. The ones that are in the second half of the generation, let's just say, I don't know, 33, 34 to 40. Sorry, it's those ones. The ones that are younger, the 26-year-old ones, they were already brought into a world where technology was already there. So they don't know a world without technology. They don't know a world without a mobile phone. They don't know a world without Wi-Fi. You know, so do you know what I'm saying? There's two. So there's two millennials. There's two types of millennials.
Okay,
there's the older ones, which are in their 30s now, and there's the younger ones which are still, in their 20s. So they're very different.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I think I'd be on, because I'm 30. I'll be 31 this summer. So I would be that younger.
Yeah, you're in the middle.
Yeah.
You're in the middle. Then again, what's your first memory, if I can ask that, of a mobile phone? Was it seeing your mom or your dad speaking on it, and it was like, okay, that's how it is?
Yeah, my first memory of a mobile phone was, we had a family phone. So we had a house line, and then we had
which doesn't exist, right, in a home anymore. I mean, it exists in an office, but I mean, I don't know anybody that has a house phone. Do you know?
No, I don't. And I remember we had a phone. This is crazy. You asked me this. I was just telling some high school group the other day about this. But whenever you left the house, you would take the family mobile phone in case of an emergency or those sort of things. And I remember there was no caller ID. So whoever called, you were at the mercy of anything. And then I think my parents had one, and then I think my sister and I can't remember, but I remember it was like a walkie-talkie. That's what I remember.
Yeah, it was like a brick, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a brick. You used to beep. I used to beep my mom, and then she'd beep me back, and then we would walkie-talkie each other, and then she'd come get me from the movies or whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, wow. It's just amazing how it's transformed. I mean, phones were these bricks, and then they became tiny, where I think Motorola and Nokia,
I remember those. Yeah.
Brought out like the flip one and that, and now we're starting to get bigger again. So
right.
Now it's almost not cool to have an iPhone. I have an iPhone 7 still. I'm like years behind, and I love it. It's small, but now like phones are starting to get bigger again.
Yeah, I got the new. I'm a young millennial. I got that new iPhone. But my sister's got some tech world. She kind of guides me in the cell phone. I think I have the 11. I have the nice one. It took me a month or so to figure it out. But
oh man,
it's a solid phone. Wow, man, this is so cool. So also, I got to go back to the one-on-one, because I also work with a lot of colleges as well, and I think, do you think the one-on-one research that you've gathered and needing that is because of the lack of connection?
Yeah, this generation are more digitally connected than socially connected. So they have a lot of, and I'll say this in inverted commas, friends on social media platforms, but they're deeper relationships. That's where they lack the deeper relationships. Right. And I think that's, a lot of them are socially awkward as well, because, they're walking around with their faces in their phones when they're walking around campus, or they're walking around high school, or they're walking around the mall, for example. You hardly see a teenager or a young Z generation walking by themselves, not looking at a phone, right?
Yeah, it's so noticeable that you almost are desensitized to it at this point. And even when you think of how you just stated that with the friend part of it, and it's definitely tough, right? But it's like, look at an LSU baseball player or a football player. Yeah, football player. This won the national championship. I mean, we talked about this the day they won the championship. My buddies and I were watching the game, obviously, and like most people, and we're watching it, and we were talking about how like that could be an 18-year-old kid who's on a platform who's essentially famous now, right? He could have he could have 500,000 followers, and it's a 19-year-old kid who goes to college and is just pretty good at football at the moment. I hate to simplify it to that level, but
we forget that. Yeah, because they look like they're like grown men. I mean, they're and we watch them on TV, and like you said, they're heroes, and they come back to I was in Louisiana the week they won the championship, and they come back and the streets are lined, and there's thousands waiting at the airport, and their faces are plastered around the town and the city and so on. I mean, Joe Burrow. I mean, these guys are absolute legends there at the school. So how do you handle that at 19, at 20? I just hope they have good people around them.
Right.
Again, gets back to family values of how you treat not only failure, but how you treat success.
I love it, man. And let's take that and run with it. I think this is a good segue to kind of tie into you and into like I told you, when we kind of go through our Diamond series and our reflection points, it started out on our own when we, the guys in MindStrong have kind of scattered around football, hockey, and baseball, and we're good friends. We all trained together for many years, and now I still try to hang and run with the guys who still play professional sports. You know, it's just more my ego probably, but you know, when we started MindStrong, we used to always ask each other. We just tried to align each other with our own personal purpose and make sure we were evolving it. If we had questions on it, to help each other with it, and so it's made a fun thing for us to ask our podcast guests as well. But from what you just said, let's take that into the whole conversation and sort of dive into the weeds here of your 10 rules, the Diamond series. And Allistairs, when I talk to you, you know, when you look at your personal purpose for where you are right now, and you've touched on a lot of this already, but you know, how do you identify with yourself? How do you find the excitement of sharing with other people, service to other people? And then, you know, my favorite, I texted you this the other day, my favorite question to ask people in that purpose-driven perception is, what are you willing to struggle for? So if I take it there, I'll ask you that. When right now in the moment, you know, what seems like something that's very worth helping these generations, serving these people, and it seems like a worthy struggle that's developed a high-end purpose for yourself. You know, does that sort of circle into a question to let you run with?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a huge part of my purpose is to inspire as many as I can, and you know, we can do that through platforms like the podcast and you know, books and getting out and sharing your message. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, we all have a message to share, but one of my purposes is helping others find their purpose, helping others find their vision, because it's very easy to talk about, like, find your vision, find your purpose, do what you're passionate at. You know, it's like, okay, that's easy. It's like, hey, be positive. Okay, you know, these are all things that, you know, life takes us down a journey that we've got to discover for ourselves. And you know, again, I'll say, the more experiences you have, the more you're going to be able to find yourself, the more you're going to be able to understand yourself better, the more you're going to be able to find what your vision and purpose is. So that is one of my purposes, is to help others find that. And, you know, I'm very grateful today to be on your podcast, because again, we're talking about these things, and hopefully, you know, some people are going to, you know, get something useful out of this today.
Right.
But, oh, okay, like maybe I should try that, or, you know, which is important. So, again, you know, I have problems like everybody else, and, you know, stress and so on and so forth. But I wake up excited, even if I've had bad news or whatever. I still wake up excited that I do have a reason. I do have as Simon Sinek says, a why, or a purpose, you know, to get up. But hey, you know, on the outside it looks, oh, he's a positive guy and he's motivating and so on and so forth. But I wake up like everybody else, with challenges, with maybe not feeling like going out today, or going to go to work today. And then I think about, okay, well, I get to share time with, you know, these students, or I get to do this, and that's what energizes me. That's what, you know, excites me about it.
It's awesome, man. It's super cool to hear you say that. And for people who are listening to this, you know, and it could be a head scratcher at times. Well, what's my vision? What's my purpose? And that's okay, right? Like, you just keep chugging along, listen to your intuition, you know, enhance your awareness to things, and just keep moving, right? And put yourself around good people, as I'm sure, you know, you're alluding towards the people that you're around, and there's powerful conversations. Like this conversation for me is, I always leave podcasts with fuel. You know, like, you're fueling me, right? And it's something where it's like, this is a good thing for just me. This is my selfish part, right? Because I'm selfishly getting fueled by hearing you speak. But, you know, I want to touch on that experience that you've talked a lot about, because, you know, is the experience that you have to go travel the world? I don't know, you know, you can touch on that. Or is the experience of try these or try that? But I agree. I really do agree. You know, I center it into, your rules is knowledge that you have formulated through all of your experiences in life, and you've acquired this level of wisdom, right? And I've always thought about, I don't know if you're a fan of The Lion King, but I'm a huge fan of the movie The Lion King, and I always tell people that in Lion King, the greatest lesson you can learn from Lion King is that, Mufasa's bestowing his wisdom onto Simba about you can do anything the light touches, just don't go to the skeleton graveyard. And the next thing Simba does is he goes to the skeleton graveyard, and it's like, well, the experience of that was he ends up getting wiser. And he gets better, and he gets better. And, Mufasa gives him this great sense of nuggets and these knowledge, like your rules, if you will. But then you have to go out and experience it. And that doesn't necessarily mean go travel, do all these wild things and think you're experiencing. It's like, no, just take them, learn them, in your world, think of them, and make an experience and get wiser is kind of how I've articulated it for myself. But can you give some advice or some ways to enhance experience in your life for whoever might be listening to this in the moment?
Yeah, and it gets back to what we were talking about, that we're living in a generation where everyone's walking around with their earphones in their ears or their faces in their phones, and get talking to people.
Yeah.
Some of the best conversations and some of the most interesting people I've met have been on flights or on trains or standing at the supermarket line, for example. It doesn't mean I speak to everybody, but a simple hello, and who knows where that conversation goes. Get talking to people and learn about their story. One of the words you've used a lot here, Harvey, is curiosity. Be curious about others. Be interested in others. Who knows where those conversations goes? Here's an interesting thing for the listeners to hear, especially, it doesn't really matter how old you are, but especially the younger generation, is that less than 20% of resumes are read. So you send your resume to a company, a business, a corporate, that's going to go on a desk with the other 300 applicants, and believe me, they're not going to go 300. The chances are that they're going to hire someone from that position internally or someone that they know. So what does that say? Build relationships.
That's powerful.
Be a nice person.
Yep.
Get talking to people. Be interested in people. When you have that knowledge, and I wish I had this way, way earlier in my life, you will open up more doors and more opportunities than ever before. Build relationships. Be interested in people. Be a nice person. Because your resume is probably not going to be read.
That is so needed. Man, it's so powerful, and that's something that I've witnessed my own personal life, right? And I'm so happy you shared that, and you've touched on one of your rules, being open-minded. You're going to have to put that into your life and your arsenal of thinking to be able to comprehend what you just said. And I by no means have that. I'm not perfect at that by any means. I keep thinking of,
none of us are.
Yeah, how that just has to be in the forefront of your mind, right? And so, and keeping that open-mindedness, and then seeing people as seeing people. One of my best friends, Dave Fisher, who is playing hockey in Austria right now, does a lot of these podcasts with us as well. The first podcast we ever did after we got done, we were sitting on his balcony, we were overlooking Minneapolis. We're watching all these people walking on the streets, and he just looks at me very subtly, and he goes, Harv, we're all in this together. He goes, we're all trying to figure this out. We're all trying to figure this out together, and for some reason, some shape or form, we're all connected. And I kind of connect that of what you're saying as well, right? And just be open-minded to that and learn it. That is awesome. And so if I keep you on a roll here and take you down to just your personal, we kind of funnel after our why into our standards, right? And so mental, emotional, physical, and you've touched on your morning routine and kind of trying to gather that evening routine and get yourself into sleep, right? But, what are the things that you personally do when you talk about how you have to selfishly take care of yourself so you're in a good position to help other people? What are just some immediate things or things that you've found that's a value of yours that you make sure that you're always at least trying to improve?
Yeah. Again, gets back to exercise, taking care of your health, because health is wealth. And I'm not just talking about wealth in the money sense. I'm talking about wealth in relationships and lifestyle, So health is number one. Number two is nurturing relationships every day. Spending some time in reading or learning, so podcasts or whatever. So that is how I grow each day. Um, those are three essentials. And then, like I said, the thoughtfulness as well is thinking about others. So, who needs a text today? Who's
Yeah.
writing an exam? Who's ill? Who's struggling right now, or who's achieved something? Send them a message. Say hi. Well done. It's just being getting
Thoughtful.
out of
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's getting out of your own head and me, and it's all about me, and going, no, like, hey, great job last week at that game, or whatever it may be. That means the world to people. Sharing a compliment means the world to people. It can change someone's direction in life. You could be the only person that gave that person some credit or a compliment, and we're all, like you said, we're all connected. We're all human beings. We all have feelings. You know a human desire is to make you feel special. We all
Mm-hmm.
want to feel special, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thoughtfulness is power. I'm gonna take that with me. I'm gonna,
Mm.
I'm gonna be talking to the boys today about the thoughtfulness. That's a great point. And we want to feel special. So to give that to people, and then people who like a one-on-one coaches meeting, they just want to feel that you love them and you're listening to them and you're with them, and that's where that human connection is, right? So it funnels into a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. And so I'll tee you up here to kind of finalize us into the rules and take us through it, because we always kind of round the bases with our vision, and what's that carrot out in front, what's that thing that gets us really excited, right? And makes us want to keep moving. And we've talked a ton about vision and how that establishes purpose, how that establishes right from wrong, and we could have a whole nother podcast just about vision, right? But when you look at yourself, what's the vision out in front? What's moving forward? Whether that's books, speaking engagements, consulting, just being on your own, whatever that is, and then kind of tee that into the rules so the people who are listening can have a set of establishing their own set of rules, and then also discovering or developing a vision for their futures.
Yeah. For me, however, it's all about fulfillment, because success without fulfillment or happiness is failure, is
Mm-hmm.
ultimately failure.
That's awesome.
We see so many successful people on the outside, but they're unhappy, and we see suicides, and we see, these unfortunate things happening where, on the outside, well, I thought they had it all. And, we look at Robin Williams, and we look at these people where you just, you just couldn't believe it would be them that would happen. So for me, fulfillment is the most important thing. So I want to do things that fulfill me. Like you said, like, my speaking and my writing. Right now, that is fulfilling me. Right now, that is part of my vision, is writing, speaking, sharing, traveling. That is my vision. Um, and the purpose is reaching as many people as possible, and having an effect on their life. So
Yeah.
again, they're very interlinked, your vision and your purpose. Do I have like a destination of how I want to be? Yeah, I want to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
We should all want to leave a legacy. We should all want to be remembered for something, and that needs to be, for something far greater than yourself. That you left something for somebody else to continue.
Mm-hmm.
You left something for someone else to that improved their lives, for example. So, yeah.
That is, I love it, man, and keep moving, right? Keep going,
Exactly.
keep going, and you'll gather along more experiences, right? You'll just
Exactly.
you'll keep redefining it through experiences. So, as we get to the tail end, man, take us through the rules, take us through the rules, the 10 rules of success, and sort of
Sure.
how you express it. Yeah, let it rip.
All right. So number one, as we've discussed, have a vision and purpose. Number two, do what you love. And again, I get to do what I love each day, which is, what I'm doing right now, and sharing, and, living my purpose. So those are interlinked. Stay open-minded is number three. Number four is add value to the lives of others. Number five, choose the right environment and people. Number six, develop a winning attitude and mindset. Number seven, build and nurture relationships. Number eight, practice gratitude and humility. Number nine, always be learning. And number 10, appreciate the moments. And I think you'll agree that we pretty much covered all those things in this podcast with what we spoke about as well. It's all very, very interlinked. And I encourage you, I encourage all the listeners out there is write down your 10 rules for
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you know what? You might like one or two of mine. Good, take them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is not this is not there's no copyright in this or whatever. It's just like, you know what? I like that thing about staying open-minded. That's going to be one of my rules.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to write it down in 10 minutes. It can be something where you're like, over a period of time, you're like, you know what? I think that's going to become a rule for my life is be more interested in others,
Yeah.
as we spoke about, instead of being more interested in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Where depression comes from? It comes from being involved in yourself too much, about thinking about yourself too much. One of the best ways to get out of depression, because I've been in depression,
Mm-hmm.
is doing things for other people, is thinking about other people, because depression is very, very linked to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. It's heavy. Yeah.
yeah. And again, my experiences I've had melanoma cancer, I've
Wow.
had a Coxsackie virus, which is also, just rids your body of all its muscle. Um, I've been through depression. I've been, it's life. That's
Yeah.
life. And don't feel sorry for me, but that's made me who I am today. And anybody who's struggling, anybody who's going through things right now, I encourage them to reach out. You need people. We're all going through something. No matter how perfect anybody's life looks on the outside, we're all going through stuff. But, reach out. Talk,
Absolutely. Yeah.
talk about it. You're not alone. You're not alone. I mean, I had severe depression, and I know what it's like. You wake up every day and you hate your life, and
Yeah.
it's a dark hole, but you'll come out of it. You seek help and take the right steps.
It's a powerful thing, man. It's crazy how I know a lot of people, and I don't know how many people will listen to this or who will. I know people who I've never met or you've never met will listen, and people that I do know, will listen, and people will listen, and those sort of things. And that's an amazing tool that we just were able to share a great conversation, and hopefully it serves the people well, and I'll go into how we started as we finish, but it is just so cool to me how much how much of a great decision and experience it's been to be able to speak to people like yourself and have these sort of conversations. I can't help but be grateful on my own end, because I'm getting to share this live right now, and I can't wait for people to hear it. But it's a cool thing, and humans are fuel. I do
Yep.
believe that, and to be interested in those people, you get fuel, and you get ideas, and you get creations, and you get visions and experiences, and there's just, I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? Like outside of nature, I always try to tell myself, outside of the laws of nature, whether anything that's inside of nature, outside of that, as humans, we created it, we thought of it, we built planes and
Mhm.
skyscrapers and stadiums and LSU. Like, we thought of all that
Mhm.
stuff. So
Yeah.
we're capable of amazing things, and that starts and kind of finishes with things like this, right? Having great conversations with good people. And so from my end, Alistair, I think that one of the greatest forms of leadership, I try to tell this to everybody, is giving away your time. And you gave your time to myself and however many people can hear this in such a short notice, and to set aside that time and speak with me, man, is so cool. And so I really appreciate that above anything, and I wish you the most success. I hope the travels go well, and I'm sure they will, and have a blast, man. But I'm very, very grateful and lucky to have been able to connect with you so quickly, and wow, I mean, I knew we were gonna have a fun conversation, but like I said, I told you in the text, I mean, all you have to do is press play, and you get to learn about something and hear from somebody. And so I'm sitting here very grateful on a Saturday morning in Minnesota or Friday morning in Minnesota. I always forget what day it is. Friday morning in Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah. No, an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on. And um, as I always like to say at the end of my podcast, you were made for greatness, but you got to go do the work.
Yeah. Yep.
And every single one of us has greatness inside of us, but you got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that work is going through the rough times, the tough times, and we all experience different things in life, but that's all part of the journey. So, no, Thank you so much again.
Absolutely, man. Let's go do the work, huh?
You bet.
All right, brother. Take care.
Thank you.